You ever have that feeling? You're at a friend's house, they're all screaming at the TV, completely losing their minds over a game, and you're just standing there thinking, I don't get it. Well, let's dive into this because it turns out neuroscience has a pretty fascinating answer for why you feel that way. I mean, think about it. A whopping 60% of Americans are die-hard sports fans. We're talking face paint, lucky jerseys, the whole shebang. They live and die with every single play. It's a huge part of our culture. So if you're sitting there in that other 40%, you've probably wondered at some point, is there something wrong with me? Am I missing the passion gene? Am I boring? Well, I'm here to tell you the answer is a big, emphatic no. See, your indifference isn't some personal failing. It's actually all about how your brain is built, from its ancient survival instincts all the way to its modern reward systems. So yeah, let's get into the science of it. First up, let's talk about the tribal brain. To really get why people care so much about sports, you have to go way, way back. Thousands of years. Humans, we're tribal creatures at heart. Back in the day, being part of a group meant survival. And sports? They tap right into that ancient, hardwired programming. And a huge piece of this puzzle is a hormone called oxytocin. When a fan watches their team, their brain releases the exact same bonding hormone that kicks in when you're with family. Their brain is literally tricking them into feeling like these millionaire athletes are like their actual clan. So, okay, here's the big difference. If you don't care about sports, chances are you have what psychologists call lower tribal instincts. Your identity just isn't as wrapped up in being part of a group. You're probably more individualistic, right? And you don't really get that automatic us versus them thing, where you're supposed to hate the other team just because they're wearing different colors. So yeah, for a non-fan, that statement probably hits home. Your sense of who you are is more, well, it's self-contained. You just don't need an external group to feel whole. But okay, that's just one piece of it. There's another layer here, and believe it or not, it has to do with addiction. All right, let's get to the really wild part. The dopamine game. Because it turns out that watching sports can look, neurologically speaking, a lot like a behavioral addiction. Think about it. Every unpredictable play, every last-second shot, every fumble, all those moments, they're like little hits of anticipation. And that uncertainty is what triggers a release of dopamine, the brain's pleasure chemical. It creates this super powerful, intermittent reward loop. And if that whole unpredictable reward thing sounds familiar, it's because it should. It is the exact same psychological principle that makes slot machines so insanely addictive. Your brain doesn't really know the difference. It just knows it wants another hit of that rewarding chemical rush. So what if you don't feel that rush? Well, it might actually be genetic. Research from the University of Chicago suggests that variations in our dopamine receptor genes can actually predict how much we care about spectator sports. I mean, your indifference to the big game could literally be written in your DNA. How crazy is that? But hold on. Does not caring about sports mean you lack empathy or you're just passionless? Absolutely not at all. It just means your passion is pointed somewhere else. And that brings us to what we can call the empathy equation. The idea is pretty simple, really. Just think of it like this. We all have a limited tank of emotional energy, a certain capacity for deep caring. Sports fans, they pour a ton of that energy into their teams. But if you're a non-fan, you simply invest that same deep well of passion into, well, other things. And you know what? The research totally backs this up. A 2021 study found this really strong link. People with low interest in sports tend to score way higher on a personality trait called openness to experience. And that's all about curiosity, creativity, and wanting variety in your life. So where does all that energy go? Well, into things like art and music or tackling intellectual puzzles. It goes into social causes, building deep personal relationships, or maybe pouring your heart into your own creative projects. The bottom line is you're getting the same emotional highs, that feeling of meaning, connection, all that good stuff. You're just finding it in a different stadium, so to speak. And this all leads us to the final and maybe the most important point. It really just comes down to how you find a story, a narrative in your own life. It's about finding your story. Okay, so sports fans often do this thing, a psychological phenomenon called burging. It stands for basking in reflected glory. It's basically when you associate yourself with a winning team so much that their victory feels like your victory. It's a huge self-esteem boost. You've probably seen this in action, right? When a team wins, what do fans say? We won. But when that exact same team loses, all of a sudden it's, ugh, they lost. It's a classic case of psychological distancing. And if you're a non-fan, you're probably way less likely to do this because your self-worth isn't tied to some game you have zero control over. So, when you boil it all down, it's about the difference between a parasocial investment and direct engagement. Fans are, in a way, spectators in someone else's story. They're emotionally invested in an outcome they can't influence. But non-fans, they tend to prefer being participants, putting their energy into things where they actually have some agency, in their own lives. So let's bring this all home. If you don't care about sports, I want you to hear this loud and clear. You are not missing out on some core fundamental human experience. You're just having a different one, and it's just as valid. Your brain's reward system, those tribal instincts we talked about, where you choose to put your empathy, it's all just calibrated a little differently. So no, you're not broken, and you're definitely not boring. You're just wired differently. Simple as that. So the next time somebody asks you, hey, did you see the game last night, and you honestly couldn't care less, just remember this. You're not sitting on the sidelines of life. Not at all. You're just playing a different game, one where you're the star player. The only question is, what are you going to do with that time?